mega corporations.
And he's going to have to finish the job. He has infrastructure. We got to point out immigration reform, infrastructure. There's a lot. Healthcare. Are they going to take another bite of the apple? They promised voters, Republicans, repeal and replace. They failed this year. Can they come back with some third way? Not Obamacare, not the repeal and replace. Is there some way to move forward? So let's be clear. There are challenges for this president heading into 2018, but this tax cut gives him a head of steam.
It gives him a head of steam for sure. And by the way, those people paying the Obamacare taxes, according to the IRS, 80% of them, they make under $50,000. That means that repealing that mandate, that individual mandate, the funding mechanism, is a big boost for Americans. Major boost for young
Yeah, and it's
Americans.
the opposite of what Democratic leaders have been saying. Think about Chuck Schumer saying, this is all about the rich. Nancy Pelosi saying, if this bill passes, people are going to die. That's the way they build this. Maybe the opposite is happening.
A Christmas present. I'm wearing my Christmas tie.
Merry
There you
Christmas,
go. Ed Henry, good to see you, my
good
friend. And joining us now with reaction, RNC Chair Ronna McDaniel. Great to see you. We've talked through this entire process on radio and in person about this, and a major achievement. The president gets a major legislative win, and the RNC now, as I just said to Ed, you guys have to take it to the streets. Where do you begin?
Well, it is a historic day. It's a great Christmas present, and President led the way. You know, I think about a year ago when he was coming to my state of Michigan and traveling this country and recognizing that wages were stagnant, that people were suffering. And now, today, he has said, we are fighting for you. We are going to give the middle class a huge tax cut. We are going to make your paychecks bigger. We're going to increase jobs. We're going to grow our economy. We're going to fight for the American people. So at the Republican Party, we're going to keep hammering home the great accomplishments of this president and Senator McConnell and Speaker Ryan. And then we're going to remind them that the Democrats were nowhere to be found. In fact, Joe Manchin went home and he saw a big banner that said, we'll remember in November. Well, we're going to make sure they remember in November that no Democrats supported middle-class tax cuts and helping the American people.
Let's talk about the major driver of the economy, and that is the corporate side of this. And I'm not talking about the mega corporations, S-Corps, L-Corps, LLPs, small businesses, the individual truckers out there. They call every day. They ask, what does this mean to me? What does it mean to them, the people that are in that $50,000 to $75,000 income level, but they have a pass-through, they have a business? What does it mean to them?
Well, it means they're going to take more money home. And it's a twofold in that we've cut so many regulations. The president focused on that at the first 3 months of his administration, cutting regulations. And that is so important to the small business owner because they were so constricted by these cumbersome regulations that were preventing them from growing and being able to expand their businesses. So that, and then with the tax cuts, they're going to take more money home. They're going to be able to invest in their businesses. They're also going to be able to help their families. This is a great day for small businesses, for, like you said, those truck drivers. People across the country are going to benefit, and that's exactly who President Trump targeted with this huge tax reform bill.
All right, Ed Henry brought it up a little while ago, Ronna, and I got to tell you, he's got a good point. Can the Republicans write a 30-second ad that lays out for the American people what this means? What does that ad say to the American people in 30 seconds?
Well, Republicans are putting the American people first, and we are increasing their paychecks. We're going to focus on creating more jobs. We're going to increase wages, and we're going to grow this economy, and we are going to make America a better place for all Americans. And we have delivered at every turn this year, and we're just going to keep doing it. So give us the majority in 2018.
All right, now let's talk about some other things. I like to cover the things that aren't always there. Today's a big day with tax cuts, great Christmas present for Americans. But what about other things? Regulatory reform. We've got immigration on the table to deal with DACA. We've got so many issues, and there's been a divide at points in the Republican Party. Is the party going to come together now that the president has a head of steam and with the help of the RNC go out and do these things? Border security, there's words out, the president's going to the border to look at these walls.
Well, so much has been accomplished in this year as we look at the year in review. You look at the judicial appointments. You look at Neil Gorsuch. You look at our Veterans Accountability Act. You looked at our increased military spending and deregulation and tax cuts. We're just going to keep doing that. The president has signaled that he wants to tackle infrastructure next year. That's something that should bring bipartisan support. You know, there's a lot in the accomplishment column for Republicans. What have Democrats done this year? What have they accomplished? Nothing. Resist and obstruct and fighting this president at every return, even if it's in the best interest of their constituents, is not a message that they're going to be able to run on in 2018. This tax bill has shown that we can come together as a party, we can govern as a party. We have a president who is leading the way, and we're going to continue fighting for the American people. Our hand is out to Democrats. We want them to come across the aisle and work with us, but if they're not going to, we're going to get it done.
Well, are they really going to come across the aisle as we wrap this up? Because we've heard Chuck Schumer say that Republicans are going to rue the day when they do this. Nancy Pelosi, this is the worst thing. This is Armageddon. I'm paraphrasing. You know the words that are being used. And they're not reading the bills. Nothing new for Democrats. But are they really going to come to the table?
Well, there's some senators who I think are going to be looking at 2018. Joe Manchin, Heidi Heitkamp, Joe Donnelly, John Tester, Sherrod Brown. These senators in these red states where President Trump won, they want the photo up with the president. They want to show that they're bipartisan. But so far, they are totally beholden to their leadership, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. And when voters go to the ballot booth next November, they're going to ask, what did my senator do? And we've got real opportunities to pick up seats if they can't come across the aisle and work on anything, especially middle-class tax cuts and infrastructure.
Thanks, Ronna. And by the way, great to see you. Have a Merry Christmas to you and your family. You've worked very hard in the first part of this term. So good luck. Have a great Christmas. You deserve a break.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Thank you, David.
All right, meanwhile, those liberals over at MSNBC, they have been trashing the president's tax plan, but it turns out they shouldn't be. And before we explain why, watch this.
This is something Donald Trump, with all the corruption and all the self-dealing that is swirling around Donald Trump, this tax plan proves that, like autocrats across the world, Donald Trump has perfected the art of the self-deal.
Look at them all out there like lemmings. Are they going to back him on firing mower? Look at them. It looks like a North Korean parade.
There's a difference between giving it to the corporations and hoping that the corporations hand them out, and we'll see who else decides to do this, and giving it directly to the American people in the form of larger tax cuts for the individuals, for the middle class, and not just the wealthy or the corporations.
So the effects of the tax bill started to reverberate today as the wealthiest people and the most powerful corporations in this country started almost literally scrambling to figure out how they're going to handle all the money the Republican tax bill just gave them. So when your family's taxes go up because of this bill, you can take comfort in knowing that that's what you're paying for.
You know, instead of attacking the GOP tax bill, maybe these liberal hosts should be thanking President Trump. Here's why. Comcast, the parent company of MSNBC, they've announced that they'll be giving $1,000 bonuses to over 100,000 employees because of the tax bill and the FCC's actions on broadband. So think about that for a moment. Do the numbers add up to the rhetoric? And joining us with reaction, Fox News contributor DeRoy Murdoch, radio talk host and Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall, and Republican strategist Noel Nickpour. DeRoy, I tell you, you talk about the civil rights industry a lot. This is the liberal media industry selling a narrative. Do the numbers add up when the very employees of Comcast are getting millions of dollars that they will inject into the economy on their own?
We heard from Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi that this money would be going just to the CEOs and the top executives. And the day after this wonderful tax cut plan was passed, we're now finding $1,000 bonuses for 100,000 employees. It's $100 million that we put into the private economy. And if you're Rachel Maddow or Joe Scarborough, maybe $1,000 is not a lot of money. But think about a cable guy or somebody working in a customer service call center, or maybe somebody who's working a secretarial type position. That $1,000 will be quite a bit of money and very much appreciated, particularly this time of year right before Christmas.
Leslie, good to see you. Is this a Christmas present for America? Come on, I know that the Democrats want to paint this as a disaster. They haven't seen it play out. But to DeRoy's point, to the money going into the economy, some $200 million from AT&T going to employees, $100 million from Comcast. May not matter to the rich elitists, but what about the Americans out there?
No, let's talk about the truth. And the reason that AT&T did this, I know we want to make it altruistic, but it's not. Basically, the reason they did it was a $28 million tax incentive for them this year because they would get screwed next year. In addition, let's talk about the hundreds of jobs that are being taken away from individuals, the layoffs that they're having at AT&T, over 600 of them.
But are those
Midwest,
layoffs, are they
even
based
more
on the Trump
concentrated
tax
in
plan?
Illinois.
You're conflating
By the way, David, neither are from the Neither are from the Trump tax plan. The timing
so why bring
makes
it into the
look
Trump
that way.
tax plan?
They're protecting themselves because of the changes for them as a corporation. They actually will get a better tax break of $28 million more, as opposed to they would lose $48 million more if they wait until 2018 versus 2017. So they need to distribute some money, and it makes them look good to say, hey, here are some bonuses. So when you ask, is it a Christmas present, it may appear that way, but that's not the reason. Is it a Christmas present to the poor? Is it a Christmas present to the elderly? Is it a Christmas present to the disabled, or to people that don't make between $300,000 and $700,000 a year or don't itemize their taxes? I would say no.
Right. Well, we know that they don't have to itemize anymore if they're below a certain income level when you look at the details. But, Noel, according to Leslie, AT&T just spent $200 million to cover $28 million. I'm not following the numbers here.
You know, first of all, I've got to tell you something. I am really angry. I'm very angry with what the Democrats have done to spend this. Number one, let's just look at corporation CEOs. CEO or corporations employ 152 million American people. And I am really tired of the media spin that corporation CEOs and corporate America is evil. They supply us with jobs. They're not evil. And the last time I checked, both Democrats and Republicans they own corporations. And the other thing that I'd like to say, which is just very irritating for me, is the fact that, you know, this tax cut really amplifies what Donald Trump is trying to do. He got elected on the backs of the working man because the Democrats weren't representing them. And he turned, you know, blue states into red states. Look at the ones that he won. And he has made good on that promise. They are going to see money in their paychecks. And these corporations that are getting these tax cuts, they are giving back to their employees. So they're not evildoers. So nice try for the Democrats' narrative to spin it to where, you know, the corporations are big fat cats and they're taking home a bunch of cash. They're giving it down to their employees. And there may be one or two bad actors that Leslie can maybe, you know, trump me on, but the majority, these guys, these women and men that are CEOs of American corporations, they are giving it back.
All right, so DeRoy, let's do some numbers here, and I like the fact that when you look at some of the things, we've got doubling the standard deduction, $12,000 if you're single, $18,000, I like that addition if you're a single parent, and $24,000. That means if you're a household under that $40,000, under that $50,000, you've suddenly got more of your money to use. On top of that, the child tax credit, big Democrat talking point, that has been increased, and another category for over 17 has been added of $500. So do the numbers match Leslie's narrative?
They don't. This is money people won't be able to keep in their pockets. In addition to that, if you used to pay the penalty for not having Obamacare, that's gone. Obamacare basically is voluntary now. If you want Obamacare, you can have it. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to have it any longer. There's something called 529 plan, which is going to let people put money aside if they're putting their kids through K through 12, a private school, parochial school, what have you. That's a fantastic thing that Ted Cruz put in, which is going to be very helpful, probably the biggest boost for school choice in decades, I'm sure. And as for whatever AT&T's motives are, it's very interesting. AT&T may figure they're getting some kind of a special benefit from giving this bonus to their employees. But what about Comcast, Sinclair, Wells Fargo, Fifth Third Bank? I don't think they're all the same. All these other people. So whatever AT&T's motives might be, it's very interesting that these other major corporations are giving these bonuses, putting money into worker education, committing to spend more money on production, on constructing facilities. And this is just within 48 hours of passage and just a few hours of this bill being signed. I think next year is going to be a boom year for this economy. It's going to grow like crazy. And the party of no, the Democrats who said no to this, no to all of these benefits, will have real trouble next November going before the voters and saying, as people enjoy these very beneficial things, that, gee, we didn't step up and allow you to have that. They voted no against all of these benefits. Shame on them.
So, Leslie, let me take this to you. Democrats always talk about, let's give a tax break to the poor, right? Let's give a tax break to those people on the lower rungs of the income ladder. In this is the repeal of the Obamacare mandate. 80% of the people, according to the IRS, who are taxed by the Obamacare mandate make under $50,000. Wouldn't Democrats be on board with this? After all, these people don't make much, and now they don't have to pay an onerous tax.
David, no, and I'll tell you why, and I'm glad that you asked me that because, this is one of my pet peeves is the healthcare side of things. One of the reasons that both Democrats and Republicans felt that we as a nation had a need for reformation wasn't just the numbers, and I know everybody likes to look at the numbers, but let's look at different numbers, not the economy. Let's look at pure numbers of how many sick versus how many people to treat those sick. There are hospitals that have been closing throughout the United States because the emergency rooms have just been bombarded because people didn't have insurance
Leslie,
to
you're
take care
going
of
off, and I got to get Nicole in here. You're
no,
going
I'm not,
off
David.
tax
I'm answering
plan.
you. I am
No, you're not.
not.
Nicole, I got to give you the last 15 seconds. No, you're going off to try and sell it. Go ahead, Nicole.
No,
give
I'm not. I'm answering your question,
I love
David.
you, Leslie. Noel, go ahead.
All right. Well, the bottom line is this, and I know Leslie's complaining, but here's the thing. The Democrats actually had a shot to get some things that they needed because, remember, at a certain time, we weren't sure if we had enough Republican votes. And here are the Democrats sitting here in a big cluster, and nobody really came forward to see if they could get some things in the bill to maybe help and vote for it. So they didn't participate. So it's really kind of unusual that they're sitting here, upset about it and, crying over spilt milk, so to speak, when they didn't do anything for the process to get anything that they want.
Well, you know what? Now they can cry over spilled eggnog, Leslie. You know I love you. Merry Christmas to you. And I love your mom. She's a great lady.
I'm not crying at all.
DeRoy and Noel.
She's in the next room, David.
There you go. Go to the Democrats out there. Go cry in your eggnog. It's Christmas season. We'll keep the spilled milk. Coming up, there's new information tonight on two big scandals. We'll tell what action Attorney General Jeff Sessions is taking following reports that the Obama administration gave a free pass to a terrorist group. Also, we're learning more details about the FBI's potential role in sharing the anti-Trump dossier with the media. Stay with us.
Fox News Channel is bringing you an all-American New Year's.
And welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. Major developments tonight in two big scandals. Fox News exclusively reporting that Attorney General Jeff Sessions has now ordered a Justice Department review of an Obama-era law enforcement initiative called Project Cassandra. That initiative targeted Hezbollah's drug trafficking operations in the United States and abroad. Sessions' move follows a recent political report that alleges the Obama administration shut down this initiative in order to secure a nuclear deal with Iran. Also tonight, Politico reporting that James Baker, the FBI's top lawyer, was in contact with a liberal journalist of David Corn of Mother Jones in the weeks before the outlet broke the first news story about the existence of the anti-Trump dossier. Here with reaction to all of this, former Utah Congressman and Fox News contributor Jason Chaffetz and Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. Greg, let me go to you first on this with the legal aspect of this. The idea of prosecutorial discretion.
Right.
What is it and how would you apply it to something of this scope with a billion-dollar enterprise or criminal enterprise?
It does not apply to this, and here's why. The federal courts have universally held that prosecutorial discretion only applies to individual cases and small groups of cases. This was a massive group of cases involving the terrorist group Hezbollah and not prosecuting them for drug trafficking as well as money laundering. You can't hide behind prosecutorial discretion for that, which means that I have concerns that justice may have been obstructed here by the Obama administration. You are not allowed to interfere in the due process of the law for political purposes. It appears that the Obama administration was doing precisely that, trying to curry favor with Iran on the nuclear deal. How many American lives were lost because of the influx by Hezbollah of cocaine into America?
All right, not just that, Jason, let me bring you in on this because it's not just the lives that Greg talks about, but it's the effect on others around the world. We're talking about if this political report is to be believed, and it is true, if it is true, that there were 30 agencies or so involved in this, not just one agency. This is beyond discretion. What about the different layers of this? And does Congress have a responsibility here with oversight, and how so?
Oh, no, Congress absolutely needs to get to the bottom of this. This is exactly one of those disgusting stories where for purely political reasons so that the Obama administration could complete a deal with Iran, they turn their nose away. These investigators, they put their lives on the line. They're doing a great investigation. And they get to the point where they're seeing that there are untold amount of drugs and cocaine coming into the United States of America via Hezbollah, of all people. And they just start to turn a blind eye to not prosecute, to just tone it down. I mean, Politico, hats off to them, because this is one of the best investigative pieces of journalism, given the depth. These people are on the record. They're not some anonymous source. But the author of this piece has got to be proud of the work, because he has done a good job documenting this. Congress should look at it, and it's a disgusting story.
All right, so Greg, there are a couple of things in this story. There are unsealed indictments. Sure. There's a filing under Preet Bharara, a big critic of President Trump early in the administration. Before we move on to other issues, because there seem to be a host of issues coming out of justice, what about those aspects of this? Can those be brought back into play?
It depends on the statute of limitations. We don't know the dates of the transactions that gave rise to what were supposed to be criminal prosecutions. If the statute hasn't run, those prosecutions ought to be presented in court, people indicted, people prosecuted and convicted and thrown behind bars. So we just don't know. Hopefully, these can still be prosecuted, but the Obama administration may have prevented that by what appears to be inappropriate, if not illegal, action.
All right, so let's go to Jason, because I like to ask questions, especially of our former congressmen, of what the Inspector General's office is doing in Washington, D.C. We now have another Political report, and this one is about a senior counsel, James Baker, and what may have been a connection to the Trump dossier. Where's the Inspector General in this? How does this and how does congressional oversight get into play here?
Well, Trey Gowdy is the chairman of the Oversight Committee. He took over after I left, and actually the inspectors general kind of report up on a jurisdictional basis through the Oversight Committee. Michael Horowitz is the one that actually runs, is the inspector general at the Department of Justice. 450 employees, a massive budget. They've been doing the investigation on the Comey matter, the Hillary Clinton email matter. They've been silent. You haven't heard leaks. And now we've seen two publicly released news reports, one back in July saying that this James Baker, the senior-most counsel there at the Department of Justice, was being looked at for releasing classified information to a journalist. And then just today, as you said, it popped that he has been reassigned. Now, we don't know exactly why that happened or what happened there, but you know, people like Trey Gowdy and John Radcliffe on the Judiciary Committee, Devin Nunes at the Intel Committee, I'm sure are going to be all over this. But I have a lot of faith in the Inspector General. I think they've rooted out a lot of things.
All right, so let's bring you guys together on this aspect of it. We've got a couple of minutes to wrap this up. First to you, Greg, what can be done inside justice to work with Congress to bring this to a real hearing, not another D.C. political hearing?
Sharing
then we'll
information.
go back to Jason.
Share information and documents. Look, I don't believe in coincidences as a lawyer. I find it hard to believe that it's just a coincidence that James Baker, the general counsel at the FBI, suddenly gets reassigned at the same moment the Department of Justice targets him in a criminal investigation, allegedly, for leaking important anti-Trump dossier material to a liberal reporter just before the election. Is that a series of fantastic coincidences? My instincts as a lawyer tell me absolutely not.
And Jason, if those aren't coincidences, the only way to find out is a real investigation. Can House Judiciary get involved in this? Can House Oversight get involved in this?
Yes, I think it starts with the Inspector General and the 450 employees there. I think by the end of March, you're going to see them come out with a definitive report. That is going to be a critical piece. It was something that myself and Elijah Cummings in a bipartisan way asked, and it started. I hate to say this, but I have said it previously. I do think they need a change at the Attorney General's office. I don't think that Attorney General Sessions is up to the job. He's had to recuse himself of all this. It's why we have Director Mueller. But there are deep-seated systemic problems with within the Department of Justice that need to be rooted out. And again, it's going to be people like Trey Gowdy and John Radcliffe and a host of other people there that have got to get their fingers into it. But they have to have the documents. They've got to be able to file a financial trail, and they have to have these people made available to the committee so they can do transcribed interviews and they can do the investigation that they need to do.
Jason Chaffetz, Fox News contributor, Greg Jarrett, attorney extraordinaire, one of our guys here at Fox. Thanks, guys. Have a great Christmas. Good to see you. Coming up, Democrats warning that special counsel Robert Mueller could be fired no matter what the White House says. But the White House says it's not going to happen, and they still say he's going to be fired. Is the left trying to create a crisis? Stay with us as this special edition of Hannity continues.
Attempt by this president to remove special counsel Mueller from his position or to pardon key witnesses in any effort to shield them from accountability or shut down the investigation would be a gross abuse of power and a flagrant violation of executive branch responsibilities and authorities.
If there is a firing of Robert Mueller or pardons, both would cross a red line and undoubtedly lead to a firestorm, much as there was in the Saturday Night Massacre when Richard Nixon tried to do the same.
If they're watching that spectacle in the Judiciary Committee and listening to Republican members talk about a coup and talk about criminal activity in the FBI, that will encourage the president to think that he can fire Mueller with impunity.
If the president were to fire special counsel Mueller, our country would face a constitutional crisis.
All right, so welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. Those were several Democrats in the last few days, and they're apparently trying to manufacture a false narrative that President Trump may fire special counsel Mueller. According to our own John Roberts today, sources familiar with the matter are saying that President Trump is definitely not going to fire Mueller, and that and all this rhetoric from Democrats, it's based on pure speculation. Joining us now with reaction, we've got radio host Steve Levy, Fox News contributors Doug Schoen, Deneen Borelli. Hey, all right, we got an all-star group to do this. First, let me go to Deneen, ladies first. Let me say this, by the way, happy anniversary.
Thank you very
I get
much.
to that. A very happy time for you and your husband.
Thank you.
All right, now let's get to the news at hand. By the way, the pardon not happening was the news, Woody pardon, Michael Flynn, whatever. But why are they driving this narrative? The president, the White House spokesman, Sarah Sanders, has said this is not happening.
We've gone from fake news to fake firing, David. What part of there is no intention to fire Mueller does the left not get? I think really they are desperate right now. They're desperate with their message because all we hear is identity politics. They are desperate with the fact that they don't want any of the good news coming out of this administration to make the headlines. Look at what the economy is doing. Look at what companies with the lower tax cuts will be able to reinvest in their companies and their employees, giving out bonuses. They don't want to talk about the good that is coming up, but what they're also doing is deflecting from all of the bias that we have heard within the FBI administration. So,
all right, Doug, you're a guy I've known you for years. You're good on messaging. You understand what works, what doesn't.
Sure.
There's a huge story today. Does Mueller or the firing or predicted firing, whatever you want to call it, does it even touch the story of the tax bill today?
Well,
in other words, is it effective?
Here's what I would say. When the president hinted at the possibility that General Flynn could be pardoned, when he said, we'll see, I think that raised the specter of what a number of the Democrats talked about happening. Now, in fairness, the president has been very clear that former director Mueller is not going to be fired, and I think the Democrats and the Republicans would best focus on getting these investigations finished and completed. Also look at the FBI agents for their behavior, and indeed to add a little maraschino cherry for Deneen's very happy day, I think we need also to look at Uranium One and Secretary Clinton. But my focus is let's get the investigations done before we rush to judgment or politicize.
All right, so let me bring Steve Levy in on this. Steve, you're the new guy here, so we gave you a chance to warm up, Steve. You're a radio talk show host like me. You talk to people every day. The president said he's not going to do it. Yes, Doug's right. When you hint at something, they take and run with it. But does this story override the question I asked Doug? And then what do the Democrats do next when he doesn't fire Mueller or he doesn't pardon Flynn?
You know, David, I wrote a book a couple of years ago called Bias in the Media, detailing how the coverage of me shifted negatively to a great extent when I changed my registration from Democrat to Republican. And I can tell you, after what I've witnessed over the last 3 days in the media, I have to write a part 2. It was incredible. The last 3 days on these other outlets in the media were dominated by this fake story. It started when Democratic Congresswoman Jackie Spears said she heard a rumor that there might, after Christmas, be some type of Nixonian Saturday night massacre of firings. Totally unsubstantiated. But I'll tell you, David, I think this was orchestrated in back rooms by Democratic operatives, because you saw thereafter everyone got their talking points. Senators Schumer and Warner went to the floor of the Senate saying we're having a constitutional crisis. Nancy Pelosi wrote to Speaker Ryan saying, you must stop this. And they were aided and abetted by the liberal media giving legs to this nonsense. And it's so unfortunate because it obscured real stories that those other outlets never covered on things like Uranium One, the dossier, and this Hezbollah opiate scandal.
Janine, you know, it reminds me of Blacklash, the backlash and the blacklash that you've put up with in the media. Is the media so intent on a story they're willing to sacrifice their business to it?
Well, their credibility is in the tank, right? You have the progressive media, the liberal media. It's all one big club, and they're all writing and saying the same thing. And so instead of reporting the truth, the facts to Americans, they're doing a disservice to the country.
Well, Doug, again, I mean, we're businessmen and women here.